Hello, Paxton Music and Life. Welcome to my channel. For all those that are not subscribed to my channel, make sure you hit subscribe, make sure you hit like, and also make sure you hit that bell to get the notifications for all my latest videos. Stone Paxton Music and Life podcast, you guys, and welcome back. And today, or should I say tonight, or this evening, or, you know, could be morning for somebody that's going to watch this, but I wanted to talk about the subject of this podcast, which is, why do producers lie? Now, this subject might maybe, you know, fluff a couple feathers, you know what I mean? But it'll only do that to the people that lie, to those producers that are lying. And it'll kind of help you artists better understand what you're dealing with when it comes to producers online, producers on social media, producers on YouTube specifically too, and producers that you work with every day. But in general, producers. Why do producers lie? And I know that's I'm being rather vague, so we're going to get into detail about what I mean when I say, why do producers lie? I've been in the music industry for many, many years, and I've worked with some cool people. For those of you that don't know me, I've had the opportunity to work with some very cool industry legends. Now, as a producer, our job is to, and you know, there's two different communities. You got the beat making community. So I want you to understand that. You have the beat making community and you have the producers community. So do understand that those are two different communities, okay? A beat maker is a beat maker. A producer can take the lyrics, once the producer's done with the beat, they can bring that artist into the studio. I was kind of getting ahead of myself. Bring that artist into the studio, arrange those lyrics, or even write those lyrics. Take those lyrics, write them. I know, speaking of myself, because I can bring an artist in the studio, and most of the artists I work with that are singers, I bring them in the studio. I usually have the song already written. So I produce the music, right? Compose the music, and then I produce the actual song, which means I bring them in and I do the vocals, vocal arrangement. I would sing out the parts. Usually I already have those parts sung out for them, and give them that, or teach and give them that to take it home to learn, or sit with them in the studio and say, hey, wait, let's get this done. Let's go part for part, verse for verse in the chorus until we get this done. So that's the producer side of it, because I think a lot of people get producers and beat makers mixed up, right? So let's say this. So I will say, why do producers and beat makers lie? So let's just put it out there like that, right? We're going to use both of those. We'll use both of those analogies because I can't say one without saying the other, okay? But that is what producers do. A producer will compose the music or the beat, and then will maybe bring the rapper in, and maybe the rapper or the singer is still needing insight. So they might say, hey, man, try this part right here. Take that, try this chorus, or move that around. You know what I'm saying? They know how to get the project from point A to point B, to finish, finito, right? So when I say, why do producers lie, there's a long conversation with this. So you guys have to bear with me as I unpack this conversation by conversation and piece by piece. I've been in the music industry for years, so I speak at a lot of music conferences. One of the particular conferences I've always spoken at every year. Only I didn't speak at it this year because of other reasons, but I speak at these conferences every year, and I speak on a panel called Making Money, Making Music. Now, if you go back in my old videos, you'll see me on the panel speaking at the NAMM convention. That's what I do. I speak all across the country at different music conventions. They book me to talk about conversations like this, or my experience running record labels, producing artists, putting artists out, and working under publishing deals with major companies, right? and knowing how to get a project from point A to point B. Because it's different when you've had to run your own record label, when there was brick and mortar, to the times now where things are all digital. It's like night and day, you guys, okay? Trust and believe me when I tell you. So when I say, why do producers lie? I had a young man message me about 5 days ago, and he was very upset. I got an email from YouTube, and he asked me, he said, Mr. Paxton, let me ask you a question. He said, why do producers lie? And I didn't know what he was talking about. I was like, I don't, what do you mean? He says, well, why? He says, I meet a lot of producers that will put themselves on a pedestal, like they've done all this great stuff. And it's kind of like there's a separation, because I'm just trying to get with them to get a record done, but they have talked themselves up to this level. And I've asked him questions. He wouldn't tell me who these particular producers were that he was working with, and I respected that. And so I asked him a few more questions, and he was like, I don't know, it just seems weird. You know, they tell me, they try to sell me on who they work with, and to get me to work with them, or they try to sell me on they've done this hit or that record. And I'm like, okay, I'm listening, because, you know, I'm a producer too, and I represent, you know, industry producers and the producers that have been in this game a long time. So I have to be careful with my response to artists coming to me asking me questions, because I don't want to bash any producers like myself that have been in this business a long time. So I listened to what he had to say, and I said this to him. I said, listen, here's the problem. We are in the age of narcissism. Everybody in the world, it doesn't matter who it is, everybody in the world, whether they are somebody or not, feels like they are somebody. And that's not a bad thing. I mean, you know, that's not a bad thing, you know. But sometimes reality meets the real world doesn't always go hand in hand with most people. A lot of people will lie to put themselves in certain positions. You know what I mean? So I told him, I said, listen, whoever these producers are, I asked him, have they had really big hits? He said, oh, they had one song that did good and another one that did okay, but, you know, it was played all over the world. I said, okay, well, so let me share with you my thoughts. And I said, have they had any other placements, right? He said, nah, that's the thing. And, you know, they're trying to charge me all this money. And I say to him, I said, well, listen, let me speak. I don't know this producer, so let me speak on his behalf. You can never tell a producer what he can and can't charge for what he thinks he's worth. That's his price. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that that man is charging you or something wrong, or what he's charging you is not right. I'm not going to do that, because that would not be right, because that's his price. So I'm not going to tell you that he's getting you financially. Oh, man, he's getting you. Oh, man, that's not right. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to respect his position, because whatever price he feels like he's worth, he deserves that, especially if he has worked hard to get to that point. He deserves whatever price he names. Now, does it mean that somebody's going to pay it? It doesn't mean they're going to pay it. But if he feels like he is worth that, and honestly, he's earned it from producing a record that's a hit, he gets that. Or if he's had a lot of placements on different projects, he deserves to be paid what he feels he's worth. So I told him, I'm not going to argue with you, or I'm not even going to place my opinion, is what I told him. I said, I'm not going to place my opinion on him with that subject. But what I will give you in advice is this. I said, well, let me ask you one more question. I asked him, I said, let me re-ask you again. Has he had any other placements? He said, no, he hasn't. He works with a lot of independent artists. And I said, so he hasn't had any more placements besides the hits that you said he's had? And he said, no. I said, I said, did you ask him? I mean, you know, this guy's been trying to get your business. So have you asked him, hey, man, how come you're not trying to get any more placements? He said, yeah, I asked him. He said, no, he liked working with independent artists. He's, you know, the artists that he worked with from ground up and they blew up. So he likes working with independent artists. You know what I mean? So I was like, okay. I said, yeah, that's cool. I said, but, so he told you he likes working with independent artists. So that's the reason why he doesn't care about getting placements, right? He said, yeah, he said he doesn't really care because, I was just wondering after having a couple hits, how come he ain't had no other placements? And I said, well, it could be. I said, I don't know. I'd have to hear his production. It could be he got lucky. And then I asked him, what was the time period to when this happened? When was it hit? And he gave me the name of the song. I looked it up. And I'm like, okay. I said, well, that was a long time ago. Guys were getting lucky at getting hits back in the 90s, back in the 80s. A lot of guys that were doing mediocre production were getting lucky. It's called being in the right place at the right time. So, especially if they only had one or two hits, and I'm not going to call them an overnight sensation or one-hit wonder, but you do have to kind of put two and two together, and you have to ask yourself one question. If a person has only had 2 placements and they can't get any more placements greater than whatever they've done, as a producer, I know the answer to that question. So I told him, I said, I'll be honest with you. If he told you the reason why he doesn't care about major label placements is because he works with independent artists, I said, I'm sorry, but that's bullshit. I'm just being honest. That's bull crap. And yeah, man, it doesn't work that way. When you are a producer, your greatest goal is to get placements. Placements means that you're constantly advancing, and with constantly advancing as a producer opens the door for other projects. But there are anomalies with producers. Excuse me, let me correct myself. There are anomalies with beat makers and producers to where they get lucky because the timing, they just happen to do something at the right time and it worked. Maybe on SoundCloud, it worked. It was, the timing was good for them. But if it was based, when I listened to this particular record, I said to myself, I said, oh yeah, that was all timing and luck. Because it definitely wasn't based on the greatest production. When I listened to this record, I was like, oh, I didn't say it to him, but I said to myself, I said, yeah, that was pretty basic. That was definitely luck and timing. You know what I mean? And I said in my last video, when I was talking about the plaques, about being ready and being prepared, where preparation meets, determination, right? And opportunity. And that particular producer that he was telling me about, he obviously was prepared. And when the opportunity presented itself, he was prepared and ready to go. So it didn't matter if the track was really, really great. That particular time he was ready, and the universe was operating for him, you know what I mean? And everything just clicked because he was ready. And even though the track wasn't that great, he was ready. And the artist and when I listened to the track, the artist actually made the track. It was the hook that really made the track. But guess what? Even regardless of that, that producer was ready. The preparation had been already done. And opportunity came, and the determination, opportunity came, and he was already prepared. So when those two things met, it's like a hand in glove. Boom. Next thing you know, he had a hit. So I said to him, so that's cool, he got a hit. I said, but I don't agree with him if he told you that he doesn't care about getting any big label placements. I said, that's a bunch of BS. Like, I don't even know why he told you that. I said, as a producer, that's what we want. We want some big placements, but if we don't get the big placements, we do not cry over spoiled milk. But believe me, any producer that tells an artist the reason why they are not focused on major placements is because they only want to work with independent artists, that's a crock of bull crap. It's not real. They're saying that to make up for the incompetence that they're dealing with within themselves, because somehow they know they probably can't get another placement because they've actually tried. And so instead of being honest, see, the thing is, transparency is everything in this business. Sometimes us producers and beat makers, we don't want to be honest because we feel like it leaves us vulnerable, right? So instead we'll lie to people because we don't want to be vulnerable and tell the truth, because everybody's trying to be somebody they're not in this music industry, especially the ones that are up and coming, especially the mediocre producers. and I say mediocre, not in a disrespectful way, but the producers that have not really learned the craft, and the beat makers that have not really learned the craft of song creation. We don't want to accept the truth. And even some experienced producers don't want to accept defeat. So if I admit to a person that the reason why I'm not chasing placements is because every song I presented, people wasn't feeling. But you know what? When a producer can be honest and say that, you're in a better position, because now you can live with the truth inside of yourself, as well as you're helping that artist learn to be honest. You're helping another producer learn to be honest. And when you can learn to be honest, it only makes you better at your craft, because then you go and tighten up your game instead of making excuses as to why you're not getting another major label placement. See, those are excuses. So I'm telling you guys, any producer that tells you, yeah, man, I don't want, I don't care about no major label placement, man, because, I'm just rocking with the independent artist. Well, that's cool. That's cool. But you can't help another artist if everybody's in the same boat. How are you going to be able to continue to help yourself and new artists if you're not getting some sort of placement somewhere that's going to take you to the next level? I'm not saying it has to be a triple platinum placement. What I'm saying is it has to be, as a beat maker and producer, there has to be some sort of consistency with your history every year with records getting placed. Doesn't matter where they're getting placed. It's like a job. Your performance in your job dictates whether you get hired to a better position, right? You guys agree with that? So as a producer, what dictates me graduating to the next position? That is getting placements. They don't all have to be hits. As a matter of fact, none of them have to be hits. But if I look up and you got a placement on Busta and a placement on Beyonce, and they might not even be hits, but guess what? Your discography, your track record shows that you get placements every year, that you're consistent. That means as a businessman, you're working hard, as well as a producer. Your music is catching ears. Your music is catching ears. People are hearing your music. They're going, hey, man, yeah. Hey, I need that beat. Hey, I need that composition. Hey, I need you to produce this record. If we're not getting doors knocked down like that, once again, doesn't matter if it's independent or major. If people are not knocking on our doors, constantly asking for tracks, asking, hey, man, or hearing our work going, yeah, I'll take that for Beyonce. Yeah, I'll take that for this person. Then we still got work to do, producers. Then we still have work to do, beat makers. So for the producers out here who are telling the beat makers and producers, correction again, for the beat makers and producers out here that are telling an artist that comes in the studio with them that, yeah, man, the reason why I'm not, chasing no big placements because I like working with you just straight up independent artists. Hey, that's cool. There is nothing wrong with that, but that's a crock of bull crap, because a producer and beat maker likes nothing more than to get their song placed on a major project, because it says that I have done something special that has caught the ears of those folks that spend that money, or that artist that is, boom, that major artist, right? It says I'm there. It says that I've done my homework. It says that I have advanced to that next level. So I told the young man, I said, hey, man, listen, be honest with the dude. Just, I said, I tell you something to tell him this. Tell him you talk to me and say, I talked to a cat who's been producing for years, and he says, it's just kind of strange that you would say you don't want any major label placements. You only care about independent. Because I told him, I said, this is the same guy that you're spending money with. And it's kind of discouraging to hear that he kind of given up on even wanting to advance in his own career. But this is the same guy that's telling you how he's going to help you with your career because he has a couple songs that got placed. And so he's riding off of those two. It's his whole history and his whole conversation is based on those two records that he got placed. And then he turns right around and lies to you and tells you the reason why he doesn't want a placement is because he only wants to work with independent artists. And these are some conversations I've had at music conferences when I speak. I'll talk about things that quite don't make sense as a producer. I'll talk about things that I want to correct in conversations in the producer and beat maker community, the conversations that are kind of thrown out there that I feel like are things that need to be discussed. I'll talk about these things. These are things that I've done in the past. And so when he told me about this, I had to get on here and have this conversation. I had to have this conversation. Why do producers lie? That's why. Producers and beat makers lie because they are dealing with a narcissistic spirit. They are dealing with a narcissistic personality that doesn't want to accept defeat. Now, here's a correction with that. It doesn't mean defeat. If I don't get a placement on a record, it doesn't mean that I've been defeated. It just means I got to go back and work hard. How do I know? I used to work for Grand Jury Warner Brothers as a producer. Grand Jury Entertainment. Michael Conception. You can look up Sir Mike. Incredible CEO, incredible businessman. And you know, Mike used to always be on us producers, right? Grand Jury Entertainment has a huge history of nothing but hits, hit after hit after hit, right? And so Mike would leave us in the studio. It didn't matter if it was hours and hours. He expected for us to have work done when we were done. And he also expected for those projects to be top quality production and writing. And when I went back to Vegas, if I wasn't in LA working at the studio, I would be in Vegas, and every Tuesday I would have to turn in my masters. Frank Lanier, which is Mike's best friend, who also worked for Grand Jury Entertainment. Frank used to come over my house, bring the DAT tapes, because they used to be mailed from LA. Bring the DAT tapes to me. I would have maybe about 3 days, 4 days to get these remixes together. Sometimes it might be on that DAT tape. Sometimes it could be 3 or 4 remixes. And I would have to have it done and have it done to be turned in by that next week and sometimes sooner. I never made excuses. There were 3 or 4 other producers with the company. And we all were competing. Although we were a team, we also were competing for the same remixes within our team, right? So there were no excuses to be made, right? If I didn't get that placement on a Britney Spears record, or Tevin Campbell, or Janet Jackson and Blackstreet, or whatever project it was that was coming to the table, which were tons of them, Dave Hollister or whatever, then I knew that I didn't do my job as a producer. I never took it personal. Was it frustrating sometimes when I didn't get a placement? Oh man, it was extremely frustrating, because we're talking about a time where there wasn't, like, you couldn't drag and drop and really do some of the stuff that we're doing now. It was still analog. Sympty tone. We'd have to stripe. I'd have to have my MPC, and I'd have to stripe it with that machine and try to, do the beat and then lock the beat in with the vocals. And the vocals had no music with them. So it was just vocals by themselves. Okay. So you had to figure out the tempo of the song, because they didn't even give you the tempo. You had to figure the tempo out. You also had to figure out the key it was in, and you had to create a remix on the MPC first and then lock it up to the DAT machine, Sympty time code, or the ADAT machine, dump the vocals in there, lock it up, Sympty time code, and then run it back through the mixer and try to make sure it's all lined up and then send it. It was a very frustrating time, but that made me a better producer. And so if I didn't get a placement on one of those projects, I just continued to work hard. But I never made excuses as a producer. I was always honest with myself, like, well, I need to work a little bit harder to make sure that I'm on top of my game like the other producers with the company are. I got to work harder. I got to get in there and work harder as a producer. And I got to, I got to get this. I have to. I have no choice. If I'm going to graduate to the next level, I can't graduate on excuses. I cannot graduate on making excuses for myself as a producer, you guys, or as a beat maker. So when we start lying to ourselves and we lie to others, we'll lie to ourselves and say, oh, yeah, I'm cool, man. I don't need no major placement. And then we'll turn right around and say that to an artist, which, by the way, kind of discourages them, because if they're looking up at that producer who's had 2 major placements and now his spirit is kind of giving up and he's kind of like, I don't care about no major placement. I don't, you know what I'm saying? Song and dance. That artist goes, well, dang, that's rather uninspiring, right? That uninspires me. Dang, this dude's supposed to inspire me. So beat makers and producers, doesn't matter who you are, high level, low level, stop lying, because that's all that's happening. I mean, and I get it. We're prideful. Producers are prideful. They are super duper prideful. And they don't want nobody to know that, if they're at their weakest point on production or something is not quite happening, they don't want nobody to know. They'll rather lie than to tell you the real truth. And the real truth is that producer, the young man that reached out to me, he's lying to you. He wants a major placement. Trust me. Do not believe the bull crap. And I'll say that again. Let me reiterate. Do not believe the bull crap. He's making excuses for himself, and he probably would have had tons of other placements, but what has happened with him is he's given up somewhat because he can't get the placements, because he's been told no, and he takes no like a door is closed, when in reality, no means just, work harder as a producer. Just, man, get on top of it. Be versatile as a producer, because the kind of stuff he does is a lot of the stuff I heard from him sound the same. So I could tell probably his problem why he hasn't been able to get any other placements is his perspective as a producer is limited. He produces in one, and it's kind of like, being one way at playing basketball. Like, you got to be versatile with both hands to be great, right? To be a great producer, you have to be a versatile producer. You can't say you are. Other people actually have to say you are. Like, I can't say I'm dope and versatile. It actually has to come from other people. But if you get hired to produce something or to do a beat and somebody wants that particular style, you got to deliver. And when you can't deliver, that's when you don't get the placements. When you can't deliver that sound is when your placements become limited. So his placements have become limited because he can't deliver. He delivered the mediocre stuff that got him a hit. And I will say mediocre because I listened to it and it was simple stuff. Any one of you guys watching this could have done it. But his timing was on point. He was prepared at that time when the opportunity presented itself. The artist he worked with was prepared. The both of them were prepared. So when the opportunity presented itself, there you go. So you got to give him love for that. He was prepared at that time, but he didn't graduate from that time. He still sounds like I listened to that stuff, and this particular producer still sounds like that same producer from back in the day. Now, is there anything wrong with that? No, but if you listen to a Babyface record, Babyface be all over the place. But listen to Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis. Great examples. I mean, they're all over the place. Listen to Pharrell. All over the place. Pharrell has Chad. Chad is that makes them both versatile, right? There's a lot of other producers too that are out there that are, production teams that are versatile because one makes the other, right? You might have one guy that's great at keys, one that's great at programming, and together they just, they're great, right? But when you have only 2 placements and you're discouraging artists and you're actually discouraging yourself, by saying you don't care about the placements. And once again, my opinion is to that young man was, yeah, don't believe that shit, man. That's not true. Like, honestly, that guy wants the placements. Trust me, that could mean a new house, new car, sending the kids to college. Don't believe he doesn't want that placement, because if he has 2 placements, he's made some pretty good money. So nobody's going to turn away a placement. But when you've been chasing the placements and you don't get them anymore because you never got them in the beginning, you got lucky because you were prepared and something happened, your placement came from your own preparation. It didn't come from a major artist. So you also got to look at that too, young man. The young man that hit me up, his placement was from a independent artist, and the both of them came together. So, I mean, you know, I know how easy it is to believe what he said, and I kind of wanted to believe it at first, but then I'm like, wait a minute, I produce records and I do beats. There's no way I would say I don't want any major placement. That's a bunch of bull crap. So once again, I reiterated the same thing I said. That's a bunch of bull crap. And I wouldn't believe that. You know what I mean? Honestly, I wouldn't. You know, I would just take it with a grain of salt that he's just not really sharing with you the truth of how he really feels, because he doesn't want to show any weak points as a beat maker or a producer. I don't really know if this guy's a producer, but I do know that he's a beat maker. But he just doesn't want to show you that weakness in him. And us producers, we have a tendency we don't want to show sometimes how we really feel. Us beat makers, we can do that. But the honest part of being honest and transparent is you're able to help an artist also be honest with where they are with their talent and if they need to get better. Listen, Stone Paxton, Music and Life, Stone Paxton, you know, the MPC Connoisseur, the Music and Life podcast, you guys. Listen, I'll be back on here again with another one. Once again, why do producers lie? I just broke it down to you, you guys. Listen, check me out on the next video. Peace and love. And I'm out. Stone Paxton, Music and Life.